Hey everyone, Raven here again, ready to dive into a story that's as heartbreaking as it is shocking. Buckle up because this one has twists that'll make your jaw drop. Today we're talking about Travis Alexander and Jodi Arias, a story of love gone horribly, horribly wrong. It was June 4th, 2008, a day that started just like any other for Travis Alexander. He was a successful, outgoing guy with a thriving career in sales and a strong network of friends who adored him. Travis had his eyes on the future. He was ambitious, full of life, and always looking forward to the next big adventure. But on this particular day, all those plans would come to a tragic, violent end. Travis had been in an on-again, off-again relationship with Jodi Arias, a woman who, at first glance, seemed sweet, beautiful, and completely devoted to him. They met at a conference in 2006 and quickly became inseparable. Jodi was everything Travis thought he wanted. She was charming, attentive, and more than willing to dive into his world, even converting to his Mormon faith. But behind her pretty smile and seemingly perfect exterior, Jodi was hiding something much darker. Jodi Arias had become obsessed with Travis. Their relationship was intense, filled with passion, but also with jealousy, control, and manipulation. Travis had tried to end things with Jodi several times, but she wouldn't let go. She stalked him, constantly called him, and even showed up at his house unannounced. Despite the toxic nature of their relationship, Travis couldn't completely break free from her, and they continued to see each other on and off, even as he started dating other women. The days leading up to June 4th were no different. Travis had been trying to move on, looking forward to a trip to Cancun with a new love interest. But Jodi, as always, was lurking in the background, refusing to be forgotten. On that fateful day, she embarked on a long drive from her home in California to Travis's house in Mesa, Arizona. She told no one where she was going, carefully covering her tracks. She dyed her hair from blonde to dark brown, turned off her phone to avoid leaving a trail, and even rented a car from a location far from her home. It was clear. Jodi had a plan. When she arrived at Travis's home, he likely had no idea what was about to happen. He welcomed her in, just as he had many times before. There was no sign of the storm that was brewing just beneath the surface. They spent the day together, took photos, and even became intimate. Further proof of the complicated, toxic bond that tied them together. But something in Jodi had snapped. She was no longer just the scorned lover. She was a woman on the edge, driven by a twisted sense of betrayal and a need for control. As the day wore on, the tension in the house must have been palpable. Jodi had traveled hundreds of miles with a single purpose in mind, and as the evening approached, her calm facade began to crack. She knew this would be the last time she saw Travis alive, and she was determined to make sure of it. And then it happened, the moment when everything changed forever. In a brutal, frenzied attack, Jodi unleashed her rage on Travis. She stabbed him 27 times, slit his throat from ear to ear, and then, in a final, cold-blooded act, shot him in the head. The crime was shockingly violent, overkill in every sense of the word. It wasn't just murder, it was a twisted act of revenge, born out of Jodi's obsessive need to possess Travis, even in death. But here's where the story takes an even darker, more twisted turn. After the attack, Jodi didn't flee in a panic. Instead, she calmly cleaned up the crime scene, washed Travis's body, and even put the camera they had been using together in the washing machine. She meticulously erased any evidence of her presence, or so she thought. Then, as if nothing had happened, she drove away, leaving Travis's lifeless body behind. But despite her careful planning, Jodi made several crucial mistakes. The camera she tried to destroy still contained images of her with Travis, taken just moments before his death. The blood evidence in the house linked her directly to the crime. And perhaps most damning of all, Jodi couldn't keep her story straight. She lied to the police, claiming she wasn't even in Arizona at the time of the murder, and later concocted a wild story about two masked intruders who had killed Travis and spared her life. But the evidence didn't lie, and neither did Jodi's behavior. In the weeks following the murder, Jodi continued to play the grieving ex-girlfriend, even attending Travis's memorial service and posting on social media about how much she missed him. But behind the scenes, the police were closing in, and it wasn't long before Jodi was arrested and charged with Travis's murder. What followed was one of the most sensational trials in recent history, with Jodi Arias at the center of it all. She changed her story multiple times, eventually claiming that she had killed Travis in self-defense, despite the overwhelming evidence to the contrary. The trial captivated the nation, with millions of people tuning in to watch the drama unfold. Jodi's cold, calculating demeanor, combined with the gruesome details of the crime, made her one of the most infamous criminals of our time. In the end, the jury saw through Jodi's lies and found her guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, where she remains to this day. But the story of Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander is more than just a tale of love gone wrong. It's a chilling reminder of how obsession and jealousy can lead to unimaginable violence, and how even the most seemingly normal relationships can hide the darkest secrets. In 2018, Chris and Shanann Watts seemed like the ideal American couple. Living in a beautiful home in Frederick, Colorado, with their two adorable daughters, Bella and Celeste, they appeared to have it all. Shanann was a vibrant woman who was active on social media, constantly sharing her love for her family and her excitement about their future. Chris, on the other hand, was the quiet, supportive husband who worked as an operator at an oil company. To outsiders, they were the epitome of happiness, a family living the American dream. But as we all know, appearances can be deceiving. Behind closed doors, the Watts marriage was crumbling. Shanann had become increasingly suspicious of Chris, sensing that something was off. She was right. Chris had begun an affair with a coworker, Nichol Kessinger. This relationship was more than just a fling for Chris. He saw it as a chance to start a new life, free from the responsibilities of being a husband and father. The idea of a fresh start consumed him, and he began to see his family as obstacles rather than loved ones. Shanann, who was pregnant with their third child, a boy they planned to name Nico, was desperate to save their marriage. She texted Chris often, trying to understand why he had become so distant. But Chris was already too far gone, entangled in his affair and the fantasy of a life without Shanann and the kids. On the night of August 13th, 2018, Chris made a decision that would forever change the lives of everyone involved. Shanann had just returned from a business trip, and the two had an emotional conversation. Shanann, unaware of the full extent of Chris's betrayal, pleaded with him to make their marriage work. But Chris had already made up his mind. In the early hours of the morning, Chris Watts committed an act of pure evil. First, he strangled Shanann in their bedroom, ending the life of the woman who had loved him so deeply. But the horror didn't stop there. Bella and Celeste, who were only 4 and 3 years old, were still in their beds, completely unaware of the tragedy that had just unfolded. Chris, in a cold and calculated move, decided to eliminate them as well. He loaded their bodies, along with Shanann's, into his truck and drove to a remote oil field owned by his employer. There he buried Shanann in a shallow grave and disposed of his daughters in oil tanks. Bella and Celeste, who trusted their father completely, were gone in an instant, their lives cruelly taken by the one person who was supposed to protect them. After the murders, Chris returned home and began weaving a web of lies. He texted Shanann's phone, pretending to be concerned when she didn't respond. He even contacted her friends, asking if they knew where she was. When Shanann and the girls were reported missing, Chris played the role of the distraught husband and father, appearing on news stations and pleading for their safe return. But the police were already suspicious. Chris's calm demeanor didn't add up, and inconsistencies in his story quickly became apparent. Investigators knew something was off, and when they brought Chris in for questioning, he failed a polygraph test. It wasn't long before Chris confessed to the murders, though he initially tried to shift the blame onto Shanann, claiming she had killed their daughters and he had killed her in a fit of rage. But the evidence told a different story, one of premeditated murder and a man willing to do anything to start a new life. The most insane twist in this case is the sheer normalcy of it all. Chris Watts wasn't a career criminal or someone with a history of violence. He was a father, a husband, and a seemingly average guy. The horror lies in the fact that he planned and executed these murders with chilling precision, all while maintaining the facade of a loving family man. The contrast between his public persona and the brutal reality of his actions is what makes this case so disturbing. In the end, Chris Watts was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, but the scars he left behind will never heal. Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and baby Nico were innocent victims, whose lives were cruelly taken by the very person they trusted the most. This case serves as a grim reminder that sometimes the real monsters are hiding in plain sight. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you're as captivated by these true crime stories as I am, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay safe and keep questioning what you think you know.